So let's get started. I actually live here in Texas, and when Sun asked me to, get involved with the eco messaging at Sun, I'm like, I live in Texas. We build power plants. You guys are in California. You don't build power plants. We don't think there is an energy problem, because we're here and we're Texans, and I guess the kind of feeling in Texas was, before global warming takes us out, we're going to be hit by an asteroid. And that's my first slide here. But, when you start to look at this, it's not for yourself, it's for your children that you start to do these things. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I want her to have some of the same opportunities that I have. So that's why I got involved with Sun to do this. And it's not easy, I am a geek. I like all my electric things. I like my toys, and I like things that are innovative and fun, and giving those things up. Well, I mean, just like basic things, like I decided to give up my hair dryer, right? And you take small steps to conserve, and I think that's what you not only have to do at home, but you have to do in your companies. There is a real eco challenge out there, and we see this. Everything's being driven up. The demands for services, the amount of users, the access. I mean, I have a teenager. A month ago on CNN, it showed a teenager getting a 600-page bill, front and back, coming in a big box. I wasn't surprised at all. I'm just like, we need to make it a law that they don't send teenagers their mobile phone bills, on paper. Email it to their mom and dads and them, but don't use all our trees up on teenagers' mobile phone bills. But what we're seeing is, because of the demands on our systems, the demands on our data centers are growing, in the same way. In 2003, you were looking at about 40 watts per square foot. In 2005, 120 watts per square foot. With the technology that's coming out, the density of blades and racks, 800 watts per square foot is not going to be uncommon. There are not many of us that get to go in and do new designs on data centers. Usually we have to work in our existing environment and, live with what we have. So, this is something to consider is, how much is your data center actually going to be able to take? I worked with a company a few months ago, and we go in there and we're talking to them about the requirements, and they go, our requirement about all we can afford in the space we have is about 60 watts per square foot. And I'm going, 60? Where are you coming from with that? And they go, that's all we're being allowed. Some power companies are telling data center customers, we're not going to give you any more power. You have to live with what you have. Now, this is quite a change, right? If the power company doesn't supply you any more power, this can impact business. Right now, across the globe, we're seeing developing countries, coming up to the speed and use of energy and resources like the U.S. Right now in China, they have a new power plant coming online every week for the next 7 years. Think about that. Our carbon footprint in this country is huge. When the globe gets going and India and China start emitting the same type of carbon footprint we have here and in Europe, it's going to impact the globe. It's coming, guys. And, we use so much power in the data center. That's why different governments are targeting us right now. They're actually taking a look at what we're doing. Going back to my 60 watts per square foot, the customer that we were dealing with, about 7 years ago, Sun bought a company called Afara. At the time, they actually had developed a processor with 16 cores. Now, sometimes at companies you plan and you get smart and you get lucky some other times, and we really did with this acquisition. I don't think anyone realized 7 years ago the problem we would be seeing today and the demands of our data center. But with this technology, we were able to put many, many threads into a processor, and today we just announced a new system that has 60 4 threads in a single core, and we were able to meet the requirements of this customer with that new technology, and that's what you'll see. Now, coming from Cray, I know all about using lots of power. When we came to Sun, we had a 64 processor system called the E10000. Some of you may be familiar with it. You know, it took 14 power cords to plug this thing in. It was bigger than a refrigerator, right? The power of this one new unit that we announced today can replace that E10K, and it uses so much less power than the previous generation. So these are some of the issues I'll talk to you about today. What we're seeing is by 2010, the actual cost to run your equipment is going to surpass your acquisition costs. It's, you know, I'm seeing it at home, right? My electric bill right now is 1/3 of what my house payment is. Last year, you know, I decided that, you know, trying to become a little greener, and living here, you know, most of my electric bill goes for air conditioning. But last winter, I took the option of heating my house with propane, you know, because electricity is so expensive here. So, you know, I was doing pretty good. You know, I had my teenager walking around the house with blue lips. You know, I felt good, but she was freezing. I had gas logs installed, and I was using them very, you know, trying to be smart using my energy in my house, right? Right up until March, when I got a $250 low-use bill from the gas company. The joys of living in Texas and trying to go a little green, right? But we're seeing this in the data centers, and I did get the gas company to not punish me if I agreed to buy like 100 more pounds worth of gas, because my tank will hold 250. But, you know, we got to get out of that phase too. If people are trying to conserve, then, you know, not punish them either. Greenhouse gas emissions, we're seeing this increase 70% from 70 to 2004. Of course, the energy sector has the sharpest increase at 145% because they're providing all the power. This is what has everyone scared. Is the government deciding how are they going to legislate the use or how we can grow our data centers in the future, right? If they don't let us have the power we need. Right now in Europe, they're looking at like limiting the carbon footprint of data centers. So if you have a business, you'll have to work with another company, or you'll be heavily taxed if you use more power or have a larger carbon footprint than you're allowed by the government. We'll probably see this here too. That's why there's a lot of initiatives going on right now with the Green Grid and some other consortiums being put together by industry to find out, you know, what's the best way to do this? You know, because we know that, you know, we have to be so careful when government starts legislating things of unintended consequences. So data center power densities. This is what most data centers are already past their cooling capacity of good raised floors, if you have raised floors. About 4 to 6 kilowatt per rack. Racks above 12 kilowatts are probably blade-based, and you need supplemental cooling. So if you take a look at the trend, you know, 46% is like within range. You need to really understand how much power your racks are using in your data center. Are they getting the proper cooling? So if you have racks that are very dense, probably you will start seeing failures in the top 1/3 of your racks if those blades are not designed for the high temperatures that some of the data centers have in specific locations. This is from the Uptime Institute. I know someone was speaking here this week. I didn't catch their presentation, but you know, this is an excellent slide. You know, if you're trying to figure out why the blades are failing in a specific area, you know, take a look. Is it the heat that they're actually being exposed to in the area where they're sitting in the data center? So where does all your energy go? You know, you're looking at, you know, your chillers, your IT equipment, your air units, your PDUs, your UPSs. Oops, sorry. So this is out of our Broomfield location. We actually measured in our data center what was being used. 68% of all the energy in Broomfield was being consumed by our computers, 3.97% by our networking gear, and 27.46% by our storage. Now, before you can start moving forward in your data center and having a plan, you have to actually understand what is being used in your facility. So one of the short-term data center solutions is EOL, unused equipment. I know that, you know, so many of these things you guys understand, they're more political than they are actual physical things, right? You have a department, they bought that server, they want it in there, they want it up 24 hours a day. They don't even know if anybody in their department's still using it, right? But they can still take a lot and use a lot of energy, and they take up your floor space and suck up cycles. You need to reduce computer consumption, get rid of those things. It's an easy way to save floor space, you know, and no need to condition, distribute, and cool unused watts, right? So we'll talk about some of these things that we found in our own data centers and in some of our customers. You know, when you have 3,500 servers in a facility, it's hard to know what every one of them is doing, right? We came up with a plan that, you know, we kept them off, we turned them off, we kept them in place for 90 days or past quarter end. If they weren't used, we removed them. Now, we are an engineering facility, and of course, you know, we'll use every cycle that we can get our hands on. But some of these systems were owned by departments that were merged with other departments. They were shut down. The engineers moved out, went to other labs. You know, we were in a big growth spurt in the early part of this century, right? The dot boom was happening, and in every closet you opened up at Sun, there was gear sitting in it. And so to get our arms around all this gear, our facility expansion, and try to get our own systems under control, we had to start doing these sort of things. We also found, you know, our customers, you know, aren't much better. With the acquisition of one company by another, the merger of data centers, when one company acquires another one, just really understanding what all the gear is used for, coming in and out of a data center isn't really easy to understand those things these days. So we hear a lot about virtualization and consolidation. And these are really hot topics. Is it easy to virtualize? No. But there are a lot of things being virtualized these days. Right now, you know, there's an organization, they're having a virtual march on Washington, D.C. So here's an organization you can actually join if you want to virtually march, and, you know, let our leaders know that we want to decrease the actual carbon footprint in the U.S. But virtualization is taking off. If you're familiar with Solaris, one way to virtualize your environment is actually with our OS. We have the capability to put containers or different applications in secure environments within our OS. So something to keep in mind going forward, but it's very lightweight, it scales, it runs on any Solaris system, it's built into the kernel, and you can run a lot of different applications in secure containers. One type of virtualization. We have the whole range. I would say the gold standard, virtualization isn't new. The gold standard historically has been on IBM mainframes. They really understood the cycles, how to break those systems up, how to use it, and how to maximize the benefits of mainframes. With the proliferation of UNIX systems in the 80s, the systems got cheap, everybody could acquire them. We had cycles we could just throw away, right? If you look at systems today, utilization on them, 10 to 20% maybe, right, on UNIX systems. That's not very much for all the cycles there and power they're consuming. So there's a range of virtualizations you can do. On our high end, we have dynamic systems domains, and this isn't unique to Sun. HP, IBM has the dynamic system domains. where you can actually take and partition your hardware up. But what we've seen over the last few years is with multi-core processors coming into play, the domains are too big, right? They're not fine-grained enough for a lot of applications. So moving to virtual machines with logical domains, you can use Xen, VMware, Microsoft Virtual Server. You have a hypervisor, and on top of that hypervisor, you can run different operating systems and divide the systems up that way. You also have Solaris, which I mentioned earlier, and you have Solaris Resource Manager. So there's ways to be creative in the environments you work in with different types of tools. So I wish I could say that everything can be virtualized. It's not easy to do. This is Broomfield, an average Sunray server, and this is the use. And this is not untypical. You see people getting to work in the morning, there's a lag about lunchtime, it tapers off in the evening. Many applications have a profile that look like this. So, how do you design, right? Where the blue line is at about 22%, you size the system. You have peaks and valleys, but these applications can even be virtualized. So, what do you need to look at? Is you need to look at blocks of time. So each block here equals 1 server hour. So there are different ways, and you look at the trade-offs for how many environments you will virtualize and what your return will be. On the left, there's 9 virtualized servers, which account for about 116 server hours, a 46% savings over a non-virtualized environment. Whereas if you do 4 virtualized servers, there's 57 server hours, there's a 41% savings. So is it really worth going the extra mile to have those additional environments virtualized to move those applications there? These are the trade-offs you have to look at. So, people who've tried this, they say consolidation virtualization is hard. It was easy, we wouldn't all be talking about it so much at this conference. This is from a CIO of a Bay Area, small business guy. He wanted his whole environment virtualized. It saved about $1,500 per application. There was no hardware purchased. There were 300 servers, and they virtualized 30 servers per month for about 12 months, and it took 3 to 5 people working full-time on it. The message here is, think about doing consolidation and virtualizing before you have to. So set up your environments to take into account some of the issues you may run into a little farther down the road. So this is some more of Sun's own data centers. Here's 6 data centers in 3 different geographic regions. The return on investment was $1.8 million over a 4-year period. The ROI model based, we started with 452 servers on this project. We reduced it to 260 in final scope that we actually we did recognize cost savings of $5.4 million. We did have to buy hardware to do this of $1.6 million. You have ongoing support costs of about $2 million, and payback came in the 10th quarter. So some of these things aren't real short term. You will have to invest to see the savings down the road most of the time. Here's just the project plan for doing this project. The resourcing, the review, the capital expenditure plans, the criteria development, the product life cycle review. We have a lot of Solaris at Sun, and not all of it is Solaris 10. We have more Solaris 8 running than we even want to admit most of the time. So we even have to check our apps, verify that there isn't anything in there that won't move to Solaris 10. But we have to certify not only on a new platform, but we have to certify the operating system. We have to do this for ourselves so we're able to do it for our customers. We have to actually profile the applications, know what kind of equipment that we're targeting to run them on, and then just do the whole project. You can see this isn't trivial. Here's the actual resource requirement to do this. Now, I will post these slides on the site so you guys can go in and take a look at the project plan, how many people, the head count it took to do this size of project, so you have a better understanding, you know, when you're looking at your own consolidation virtualization projects, what it may take. But I mean, you know, your mileage may differ, but it will give you some idea. Like I said, if somebody says this is really easy to do, just like go out and do it over the weekend, you know, rock and roll on Monday, it's not going to be a happening thing probably. You have DBAs you need to get involved, you have planning sessions, you have your ops people, you have your system managers, and you have your architects. You all have to coordinate to make sure that these projects are pulled off. And like I said, this isn't easy. We don't have a lot of extra space in our facilities, right? Think about it. If somebody wanted to, like, you know, bring in a whole bunch of new equipment into your data center, would you really have the power and the space to do it, right? You know, it's a hard thing. So how much can virtualization save? In our IT data centers, we saw it save between 10 and 25% of 1,000 applications. So out of 3,500 production systems, we were able to actually virtualize, you know, on the max in this environment, 875. And we did reach that point. We guessed it would take 1 to 3 years. It took a little over 3 years to complete. These aren't trivial projects, and the final configuration consumed 1/3 to 1/2 of the original energy. That's where your big savings is. If you can reduce your carbon footprint, like in the state of California, there are all kinds of benefits if you do that. If you buy new energy efficient systems, you can get power rebates, you can get energy rebates. And so depending on your locale, I know California has it, Washington's looking at it, and I think even Utah. In EMEA, it's even bigger because if you don't reduce, you're taxed at that time. So, technology refresh. Technology refresh can save on a couple fronts, not only in power and cooling, some of the older systems, but in maintenance costs. When I was talking earlier about the big systems that we had, 64 processors, do you know the maintenance cost on that particular system? Right now, it's $36,000 a month. I mean, that system in 1 month, if you replace that one system with one of these 1U units for $36,000, you could buy a new one of those every month. So just keep in mind, it's not just power and cooling, it's also maintenance costs. This is one of the projects we worked on, a technology refresh. The 880s, we had 2 per rack. We had 11 racks. These used 617,000 kilowatts per year. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a launch today, a general availability of this new processor. The previous generation was the T2000, which was a 32-threaded single core processor. We replaced those 880s with 11 of these T2000s in 1 rack. The kilowatts per year used, 39,000. So, you know, definitely rack space, 10 racks worth of systems. Quantity, half the units. And the power, we saved 16 times the power going to the new systems. This is some of the technology that I mentioned that we got lucky on, right? It wasn't designed, we didn't plan for it, but because it's an efficient design, it's multi-threads in a single core, we got lucky on the power side. Now, marketing would say we designed it, right, for this specifically. I'm in engineering, we tell you the truth. So can you guess what this is? This is 4 megabytes of disk from IBM. If you can get it in your airplane cargo door, you know, you can take your 4 megabytes of memory with you wherever you want to go, right? But it just goes to illustrate, you know, we all have some old dinosaurs, definitely not this old, in our data centers. But take a look at some of the big old things we have. I love this shot. We had a consolidation effort in Newark, California at one of our facilities. This was not only a lab, but it was a manufacturing facility. So we were taking a look at our lab, reducing 202,000 square feet, reducing it to 80,000 square feet, 2,200 servers to 1,000. We actually took a look at storage this time too, reducing the number of storage. The power requirements, 2,200 kilowatts of power down to 560. Our compute capacity actually increased 273%. Our storage capacity increased 373%. But here's the kicker, guys. This wasn't easy. This was a political battle because we had to spend $7.2 million in capital equipment expenditures to recognize this savings. Now, what happens at all of our companies, right? One guy, you have a CIO, right? And he has his IT budget. You have another guy who owns the facilities budget. This wasn't trivial to pull this off. The facilities guy was looking at having to spend $10 million in construction costs, right, to take care of our growth, right? And it's getting the companies to realize that to do this, you have to change internally, politically. And so you could see we were able to pull this off with a lot of hair pulling, crying, kicking, and screaming, but it did happen. And you can see as the company as a whole is recognizing the value of this. So I showed this slide yesterday on my Hit My Ground Running presentation. I said, oh, this is just the gear we pulled out of the closets. But this is only 20% of the gear in this facility. And you can see we have a hodgepodge of everything. Everything from, you know, some of these systems, you know, that's a lot to be said about Solaris. You know, and some of these systems hadn't rebooted in 6 years at this facility. It's incredible, right? But they're all gone now. So how do you do this? You have to have some intermediate plan oftentimes to pull this off. We came up with, well, one of the guys I work with calls it our data center in a dumpster. It's actually Project Black Box. It's an actual shipping container. These shipping containers, and we productize it, we sell these now. They have their own unique cooling systems. You know, they can be delivered, you know, standard container delivery, you know, 18-wheeler. They have their own engine generator. They're self-contained. So if you have a project where you need excess capacity or you're doing a consolidation project and you need an interim step, you know, to take the old gear out before your new gear arrives, we have black box containers, and it's used for just this purpose. You know, what we are looking at is, you know, select a server, a rack server or blade to go in this whole system. It can take the high density in this particular container, right? You can get things moved and then ported to your new center at the correct time. We also have customers that buy these for disaster recovery sites. We have them that, you know, want to put them out in fields in Iowa, where they do have a little more power than they have in New Jersey. But, you know, with our society now being mobile, and they want capacity where they need it, and it doesn't have to be right next door to the business any longer. You know, we have the black box. So just, you know, we call it a refresh plan, right? It's flex space. That's another good thing about Sun. They let us work from home. It is so wonderful. I don't have to sit in traffic for an hour and 15 minutes every morning driving into the Dallas office and an hour and 15 minutes going home, because we have flexible hours and we have work from home programs. So that's great. I actually had I have a truck, I admit it, and I would get stuck, you know, in traffic out here on 35. And I took my truck in because the CD player wasn't working, and I was so stressed from sitting in traffic. The dealer wanted to know how my steering wheel got bent. And I had to say, it's defective. But actually, from sitting in traffic, I actually bent my steering wheel. So having flexibility in your data center environment in your life is a wonderful thing. But anyway, Our black box is flex space. It's custom hardware. If you want to build a new data center, 3 to 6 months, that is top speed, right? Flexible space, available in 1 to 2 weeks. Energy efficient. We have some very unique cooling technology in here, and I'll go into that in a little bit. So, size of your cooling opportunity. On these issues, I recommend you work with Liebert Emerson. They are coming up with some really innovative things in near term. We're actually using the enclosed racks right now in some of our facilities, but you can see they have a lot of embedded cooling, farther out, component cooling down the line. But talk to them directly about cooling options and what they can offer you in your own data center. Short-term solutions. In some of your data centers, hey, just clog the holes. Do a quick study. See if you can move some floor tiles around, clog holes. This can account for as much as 20% of cooling loss, right? And so you can implement this in a matter of weeks. This is something you can do quickly to increase your cooling capability. We do have a group at Sun that does this, Sun Managed Environmental Services. They actually charged us. So, sometimes you wonder if you work for the same company. But anyway, another project we are working on, it's our ERP implementation. It's called the IBIS project. We actually have 1,500 square foot, 8 by 12 kilowatt racks with in-row liquid cooling modules. The total project cost was $600,000, and it took us 10 weeks from approval to get it commissioned. So we are getting better at this. It's in Broomfield, Colorado. This is the containers I was telling you about. We have them in Norway and Menlo Park. You can see the way the in-row rack components come together to give you high density cooling. This is for, you don't have to do everything in your data center. You may have a specific location where you can implement this type of technology. We have the fusion racks. This is some new rack technology, 12 CPU blades and 2 switches per blade in this particular configuration. Just kind of the airflow, we figured out, don't try to fight, heat's gonna rise, so, make your airflow go in that particular direction. We've done a lot of designs historically where we tried to fight nature, and it didn't work. But in our project black box, this is our cooling. Airflow's in a circular path with fans and heat exchangers per rack. Like I said, it's a very innovative design. You have up to a 60-ton chiller for a full 200 kilowatt load, and this is 20% more efficient than conventional space. So you can see the heat exchangers are orange down here in the diagram in between the computer rack. You actually pull the racks out into the center aisle of the black box to work on it. You have a fan that keeps the cool air flowing throughout the whole container. But it's very innovative design. Take a look at it, and you may be able to implement something like this in your own data center if your needs require it. Local power generation. I'm reliant on the gas company and the electric company, like a lot of data centers are. But I have some pretty innovative neighbors who are doing solar panels, windmills. They're giving back to the grid. Some months they get checks from the energy company. I'm very jealous. But it did cost them about $25,000 at their house to implement their solar panels in the systems that they're using. So that's that's a hang up for me personally. But it's something our data centers are looking at. The EPA actually has a server and data center energy star document publication out there with different types of cooling options. I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but you have a molten carbonate fuel cell chiller, phosphoric acid fuel cell chiller, microturbine and other packagings, and a gas turbine. So, you just need to look at your requirements, what the costs are for these, what the gas cost is to run them, what the savings will be, what your total capital costs will be to actually implement this type of technology. And what is important is how many years is it going to take to get the payback with this, right? So this molten carbonate fuel cell chiller, if you don't get a payback without incentives for 21 years, are you really going to spend your capital in this way, right? Where you look at, 4, maybe 5 years, that may be something you implement. This is something you have to build your spreadsheets, talk to your finance guys, and figure out the best approach for your data center. Here's just a data center news story where one whole data center, it's 2,000 square feet building from affordable internet services online. It's actually powered by panels. Their whole unit is. So it's just something to start looking out for as far as data center solutions and innovative technologies. Like I said earlier, in different locations, they'll have different implementations of power, cooling, and technology. Windmills, big windmill generators up in Umbrella are really big. I know there's a big windmill farm in California, Nevada, giving back to the grid. Some of your companies have large acre tracts. Maybe you could implement or suggest implementing some of these types of solutions for your own data center power on site. I think that if you have teenagers, they need to generate their own electricity. Like I said, it's hard. Think about what kids do today, right? You're sitting across the table from your teenager and they're texting you, right? It's not uncommon. And you're thinking, the cycles these kids use to play video games, to text, to talk on the phone, to take photos, to do their music videos, to do all these things. I mean, no wonder our data centers are filling up around our ears, right? When I used to ground my girls, I used to put them, make them go to their room. Well, what did they do? They went in there and did what they were doing before they were grounded. They were texting and they were on their computers, right? If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. And so last Christmas, for my kids, I built a zip line in my backyard. It's 30 foot up in a tree. And so when they get grounded now, they have to go and do 20 zips. So they have to run out there, they have to climb up the tree, they have to go down the zip line, and they have to do this 20 times. It is the best thing for jumpy hormones I've found. That and a trampoline in between that zip line, so I go, okay, 20 zips, 5 flips, and then you can come in and rest. And you can text and get on the computer. They're too tired then, right? So my kids are really fit now too. I should do it myself. So organizational changes, I talked about this a little earlier. This is the hardest thing from our level to try to influence in our organizations is things are going to have to change. Money is going to have to be different going forward in a green data center. You have a CIO, which is the largest consumer of energy in your company, right? Well, the VP of facility pays the bills. But they usually don't have any influence over each other. They usually just have hammers and they go, provide me more space, I want more power, right? So the CIO usually beats up your VP of facilities. So things need to change within companies. You have to align spending with budget responsibilities going forward. And like I said, it's not easy. It's something, that we can recommend. We can prove to our companies that things have to change, but politically, this is the hardest thing for us to do and influence. Much harder than probably doing consolidation and virtualization. But, we need to give the CIO the electric bill to pay a couple of months, right? So feel my pain, pay my bills. Give the facilities guy the IT capital budget for a while. Say, can we get our business done with this budget and this floor space with equipment we need? So, and like I mentioned earlier, our Newark consolidation was done with facilities money. And that it was a lot of money. $7 million is a lot of money, but it did save us $10 million, so we netted out 3, right? Nothing is easy. The next thing we need to keep in mind is to recycle. We have a lot of old computer gear out there. Unfortunately, developing countries are becoming dumping grounds for the US and European computer gear. We all think we're doing something good, but if we don't want that old piece of broken down equipment, nobody else does either, right? And we're seeing this come back to bite us right now. Look at all the recalls there are for toys with lead in the paint. I mean, the last thing you want to do, guys, is buy your wife any costume jewelry this Christmas. Where do you think they get all that old lead from? It's out of our old computer gear, right? Well, that's what I tell Jim anyway. I want gold for Christmas. So I said, you don't want me to touch my skin, I have to have the good stuff. But, take a look at some of these statistics on the Basel Action Network. Lagos, Nigeria, 500 containers a month, 800 computers in each container. There's hundreds of thousands of systems going into developing countries. They try to burn them. When they try to burn them, there's a lot of cadmium that's released into the environment. And then they try to shove all these computers into their lakes and streams. I mean, the problem just is magnified when these sort of things happen. So don't let it happen to your gear. Make sure that you have a recycling program, that your gear is going to responsible people, that they are reclaiming, remanufacturing, reusing, and getting the hazardous materials out of the old systems. We do have an e-waste and hazmat program within Sun. We did recognize this early on. Over 50% of all the systems we take back. Now this is Sun Systems. We crush our competitors' stuff. Well, I'm sure they crush ours too, right? 50% of our stuff actually goes into a reman program. We do our remanufacturing in Linlithgow, Scotland. All metal and plastic is recovered. Less than 5% of our own systems enter the waste stream. We're fully reduction of hazardous substance compliant, and there are going to be next generation regulations out on all these issues. It's coming sooner than later, right? Get prepared for it. I want to let you guys know we do take in IBM, HP, and Dell equipment. We probably will give you more for their stuff than we'll give you for ours, trading it in. We like taking footprint from our competitors. It's one of our favorite things to do. So anyway, if you're looking at some way to get rid of some of your old gear, think about trading it in for some new Sun gear. And that's all I had today. I know I was standing between you guys and lunch. I wanted to have enough time for questions and answers if you have any. I think the microphone is active, right? Or just come and take a look at my slides on the network, and I'll have email me. I'm at Sun. We do lots of email. So just contact me with anything you might have. Any questions? Thank you.
So there's this interesting kind of problem with modern electronics outside of the data center. We spent a lot of time at this conference talking about the problems of power consumption inside of the data center. It turns out that there's a significant problem outside of the data center as well. In thinking about addressing that in a context of businesses, we've all, at least I hope, kind of switched from sourcing CRT monitors to flat screens, which is great. The power consumption is a fraction of the power consumption on a CRT, not to mention all the lead and the other crap that goes along with it. There's another problem with these, though, and that's this: the power supply. Department of Energy currently estimates that 40% of the electricity that goes into running home electronics, monitors, cell phones, you know, all of that sort of stuff, 40% of the energy that goes into running home electronics is consumed while the device is turned off.
Exactly. It has to be unplugged.
It's these things. And in businesses, you know, you used to see a lot of, you know, turn your monitor off at night because it's a really easy way to conserve energy. With a CRT, it did that. With an LCD monitor, not so much.
Right.
Right. So there's just a lot more to it than just what goes into the data center. Second point, and this is just really highly geeky, but your slide about your recovery program, and you know, HP and lots of large manufacturers are doing this. I'm sort of interested, and I don't know whether you've got any insight into this or not. There's a really interesting paper from a Sun hardware engineer, and I can't remember who it was at this point, about the radioactive isotope content of the lead that goes into the solder in modern computers, and the effect of the alpha rays that's emitted, to the extent that the implication was that Sun, at least, sources aged lead for solder. And I'd be sort of interested in, you know, what you do with the recovered lead from recycled equipments that may not meet the manufacturing specs for radioactive content because of the effect that that has on the reliability of the computer as a whole.
I don't know what we do with that. I'll have to look into that, but email me that question and I'll find out from our remand program. But you're right, part of the RoHS reduction of hazardous substances was actually taking that type of lead out of our computer systems. So because we have a large presence in Europe, it was adopted there first, but we manufacture in Hillsborough, Linlithgow. We have the same manufacturing standards across all our product line. So we are RoHS compliant now, but I don't know what we do with that lead when we take those old systems back, because there are a lot of really bad things in them. And like I said earlier, that's the lead we're seeing in the paint in our kids' toys now coming from foreign countries. Yes?
You had had a few slides on your Project Black Box, and when they first were announced, it was kind of interesting. Someone had gone a little wild with Photoshop, and they had like a photovoltaic panel powering it, which was kind of silly given the power requirements of it. But apart from in-house, how many black boxes are deployed right now, and how far along is that project?
We have revenue released the Project Black Box. I don't know exactly how many, because I am Spark specific, and you know that's kind of taken care of by another group. I know that a couple that have been deployed have had my Spark products in them, so I don't know the exact number, but it is very successful. We're looking to probably GA. GA means general availability. We go through a process at Sun, so we are revenue release a product, and then we build to order during that time, and then at general availability we have standard lead time. So we'll have a standard 14-day lead time starting in January on those systems. But like you said, it's a great idea. Any other questions? Well, I know it's lunchtime. Don't want to stand in between anybody on lunch. Thank you for coming to, Friday about noontime today to my presentation. Just stop me in the hall, ask me any questions, or email me. But thank you so much.
tell your husband off for working all last night?
It still wasn't when I called them. I called them and I said, hey, what are you doing working? He said, what do you mean now? I said, well, I was standing next to Paul and I got the email. Because it was really funny. When I won the laptop, you know, he moved at it before he got back to my office.
Yeah.
So I had spies everywhere. So it was pretty funny. But, yeah, I was just sending an email to somebody because we're trying to organize. Tomorrow is Mark. Well, Mark's birthday was in September. But tomorrow we're taking a group of kids to Atlantic City. There's a magician performing there.
Oh, cool.
So we planned this whole trip. We're taking a van full of kids.
Yeah, who's a magician?
His name is Darian Roman, I think. He's like some protege of Siegfried and Roy. He does like a magic singing thing. I don't quite know exactly. So it sounded like fun, something different, you know, what he did when they're 14, you know?
Right.
So I said, rather than have him sing, I said, yeah, if you're a good friend, you can take him down. Tickets are only $25, you know.
That's a good deal.
So it happens to be like tomorrow. So I'm trying to organize some directions. You know, Chris got directions and stuff. But I sent an email to one of the kids' parents and said, "Come over and meet tomorrow." And she said, "I can't believe you're in Dallas and you're doing all this." I said, "You know, it's messaging. It's network, instant messaging, email, and cell phone."
I know.
I can manage my
I don't
household
even know
remotely.
my phone numbers anymore. All I do is email. Somebody asks me my phone number. I give them my wife's because that's the
That's
number
what
I
you can
got.
remember. I don't remember Mark's. So he's the newest one. Chris is that fun. Mine and Eric's are almost identical. It's just because he got Chris's old. So I know that. Mark just got a phone this year. His number I can
Yeah.
It's beyond like, I have to look it up and make sure.
Yeah, I know. Numbers stored on the phone. So I mean, there's like no reason to
No
remember.
reason to remember.
I know. And if you lose that, you're
You know, it's like that when I was taking, I remember taking math, like calculus and stuff. And I remember, you don't have to understand that much. As long as you know how to get from point A to point B. You know, when you're trying to solve a problem, you don't have to remember the intermediate stuff. You just need to know the process. Same kind of thing.
So what time are you flying out today?
My flight's at 5:40. I got an email from Continental
Yeah.
saying your flight may be delayed, but still be there at 5:40. Then I got another one saying it's back on time. So I'm gonna take a 250 shuttle.
Oh, okay.
That should get me out there.
Yeah, these people said they would drive me to the airport once. Because otherwise, they're going to have to leave at like 9 for a
How far is it?
2:15 flight. I don't know. They live in Allen, which the train will take me to Plano, and then
How far they from here?
Oh, I don't know. They don't care. They were just up north. They did like a 6,000-mile trip over a month ago.
This is nothing.
Doesn't mean anything to them.
Chris's cousin lives in El Paso. Now, Fort Worth. And I was going to try to get together with her. It's too hard. Anyway, I'm going to catch up on this. Are you going to the talk lunchtime?
The Alva one?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to go. I like him and I don't like him.
Never met him. Carlo.
He was that guy last night.
Yeah, I know. I know. I think I'll go sit down.
Sure.
When is it? It's 1 o'clock, right? Yes. There's a little time.
I'm going to go out and get something to eat. So.
You're going to go out?
Yeah.
You go now?
Yeah, I'm going to go to this barbecue in a second.
I'll go with you. Company.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to buy a train ticket because it's a bit of a, it's like 5 or 6 city blocks. But I mean, if you get
Train
reimbursed,
ticket right there?
yeah, right there.
Yeah, can you give me 5 minutes?
Because I don't want to carry this thing for 5 miles.
Yeah, no, I got this too.
If I was just hoofing it, I'd just walk.
You want to meet in the lobby like 10 minutes?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
I'm going to finish up a couple of emails and go to the bathroom. Okay, thanks.
I'll tell you what, I'll meet you. You know where the escalator is down into the basement?
Right out here?
To where the
To where the
exhibition
exhibition
area is.
is?
Yeah, I'll meet you right in front of that.
Okay, 10 after.